The United States and China, the world's two largest economies, have been bound together for decades by a complex web of trade. This relationship has fueled global growth and lifted millions out of poverty. Chinese factories became the workshops of the world, churning out everything from smartphones to clothing, much of it destined for American consumers. This massive exchange of goods created jobs, boosted profits, and intertwined the fates of these two economic giants. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly mutually beneficial relationship, tensions were brewing. The US for years expressed concerns over China's trade practices, alleging unfair competition, intellectual property theft, and a widening trade deficit. The stage was set for a conflict that would have global ramifications. This seemingly straightforward image of global trade belies the complex realities and tensions bubbling beneath the surface. In 2018, the simmering tensions between the US and China over trade erupted into the open. The Trump administration, accusing China of unfair trade practices, imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. These tariffs, essentially taxes on imported goods, were designed to protect American industries and jobs from what the US perceived as unfair competition. China, retaliating in kind, levied tariffs on American products like soybeans and automobiles. This tit-for-tat exchange of tariffs marked the beginning of what became known as the US-China trade war. The conflict sent shockwaves through the global economy, creating uncertainty for businesses and threatening to disrupt long-standing supply chains. The visual representation of this tariff war underscores the escalating tensions and the high stakes involved for both nations and the global economy. Over the next few years, the trade war between the United States and China escalated dramatically, with both sides imposing wave after wave of tariffs in a tit-for-tat battle. What began as a dispute over trade imbalances and intellectual property quickly grew into a much larger economic confrontation, affecting industries and markets around the world. The US, under the Trump administration, slapped tariffs on over $550 billion worth of Chinese products. These tariffs covered a wide range of goods from everyday electronics and household items to furniture and industrial components, impacting both large corporations and small businesses alike. In retaliation, China responded by imposing tariffs on more than $185 billion worth of US products. These measures targeted key American exports such as agricultural products, machinery, and vehicles, striking at the heart of US manufacturing and farming communities. Beyond tariffs, the conflict expanded to include a host of new restrictions on investment, technology transfer, and even accusations of currency manipulation. Both governments introduced new policies and regulations, further complicating the global business landscape and raising the stakes for multinational companies. The business environment became increasingly unpredictable, with shifting policies and sudden regulatory changes making it difficult for companies to plan for the future or make long-term investments. This uncertainty had a chilling effect on investment and economic growth on both sides of the Pacific. Many companies delayed expansion, cut back on hiring, or even relocated operations to avoid the fallout from the ongoing dispute. This image captures the human face of the trade war, highlighting the anxieties and uncertainties faced by workers in industries directly impacted by the conflict. For many, the future became clouded with doubt, as livelihoods and communities hung in the balance. The impact of the trade war was felt most acutely on the factory floors of China. The tariffs imposed by the US made Chinese goods more expensive for American consumers, leading to a decline in demand. Orders slowed, factories cut production, and workers faced layoffs. The once bustling manufacturing hubs of China began to experience a slowdown, a stark contrast to the booming growth of previous years. For many Chinese businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises that formed the backbone of China's manufacturing sector, the trade war posed an existential threat. These businesses, often operating on thin margins, were particularly vulnerable to the sudden shifts in demand and increased costs brought about by the trade dispute. This visual representation of economic data illustrates the tangible impact of the trade war on China's manufacturing sector, highlighting the economic pain felt by businesses and workers alike. The trade war claimed many casualties, leaving a trail of struggling businesses and unemployed workers in its wake. Factories that once buzzed with activity now stood silent, their machines idle and their gates locked. The ripple effects of tariffs and trade restrictions were felt far beyond boardrooms, reaching deep into the lives of ordinary people who depended on these jobs for their livelihoods. One such casualty was a textile factory in Guangdong province, which was once a thriving hub for garment production. For years, this factory provided steady employment to hundreds of local families, producing garments that found their way to stores across the globe. The factory, heavily reliant on orders from U.S. clothing brands, saw its business plummet as tariffs made its products more expensive in the American market. Orders dried up almost overnight, leaving warehouses filled with unsold inventory and workers uncertain about their future. Unable to cope with the sudden drop in demand and rising costs, the factory was forced to shut down, leaving hundreds of workers jobless. Many of these workers had few other options as the local economy was heavily dependent on manufacturing. In another instance, a solar panel manufacturer in Zhejiang province, a major exporter to the U.S., faced a similar fate. The company had invested heavily in expanding its production lines, expecting continued growth in overseas markets. The tariffs imposed on solar panels from China dealt a severe blow to the company's exports, forcing it to scale back production and lay off a significant portion of its workforce. Skilled technicians and assembly line workers suddenly found themselves without work, their expertise rendered useless almost overnight. These stories, repeated across various sectors and provinces, painted a grim picture of the trade war's human cost. From electronics to furniture, countless industries faced similar struggles, with closures and layoffs becoming all too common. This image serves as a stark reminder that, behind the economic data and policy debates, there are real people and communities grappling with the fallout of the trade war. Families are forced to tighten their belts, children see their futures clouded with uncertainty, and entire towns feel the weight of lost opportunity. The true cost of trade barriers is measured not just in dollars but in disrupted lives and broken dreams. Faced with the harsh realities of the trade war, Chinese businesses were forced to adapt quickly and decisively. The sudden imposition of tariffs and shifting global policies created an environment of uncertainty, pushing companies to rethink their strategies almost overnight. Some companies, particularly larger and more resourceful ones, began exploring innovative ways to mitigate the impact of tariffs. They held urgent meetings, analyzed new data, and brainstormed creative solutions to protect their bottom lines. Many diversified their markets, seeking new customers in Southeast Asia, Europe, Africa, and other emerging regions. By expanding their reach, they hoped to reduce their dependence on the U.S. market and cushion the blow of lost revenue. Others tried to shift their production away from U.S.-bound exports, focusing instead on growing domestic demand or exploring entirely new product lines. Some factories retooled their assembly lines to manufacture goods for different industries or markets. However, these adjustments came at a significant cost. The process of changing suppliers, retraining workers, and investing in new equipment strained company finances and morale. Diversifying supply chains and finding new markets took time, required significant investment, and involved navigating unfamiliar regulations and business cultures. The learning curve was steep, and success was far from guaranteed. For many smaller businesses lacking the resources, connections, and flexibility of their larger counterparts, such adaptations were simply not feasible. They faced mounting debts and shrinking orders with few options for survival. The trade war accelerated a trend of factory closures and job losses, particularly in labor-intensive industries. As businesses struggled to stay afloat in the face of mounting challenges, entire communities felt the impact of these economic shifts. This image illustrates the strategic shifts Chinese businesses are making to adapt to the changing global trade landscape. By seeking new markets, developing innovative products, and reimagining their supply chains, they hope to find new opportunities and mitigate the impact of the trade war, even as the future remains uncertain. As the US-China trade war dragged on, its long-term implications remained unclear, but several potential scenarios emerged. One possibility was a protracted economic conflict, with both sides locked in a cycle of tariffs and retaliation. This scenario threatened to further damage the global economy, disrupt supply chains, and stifle innovation. Another possibility was a negotiated settlement, with both sides reaching a trade agreement that addressed their concerns. However, even with a deal, Some of the damage inflicted by the trade war, such as the erosion of trust and the push towards decoupling, could be difficult to reverse. This image encapsulates the uncertainty surrounding the future of the US-China trade relationship, highlighting the potential for both resolution and continued conflict. The trade war also had broader geopolitical implications. It highlighted the growing rivalry between the US and China, not just in the economic sphere, but also in terms of technology, military power, and global influence. The conflict fueled a debate about the future of globalization, with some arguing for a more decoupled world, with reduced interdependence between the US and China. Others argued that despite the challenges, dialogue and cooperation remained essential to address global issues like climate change, pandemics, and nuclear proliferation. The trade war underscored the need for a more stable and predictable framework for US-China relations, one that could prevent future conflicts and promote mutual prosperity. This image serves as a stark reminder of the broader geopolitical risks associated with the US-China trade war and the potential for a more fractured world. The US-China trade war had a profound impact on Chinese factories and businesses, leading to job losses, factory closures, and economic uncertainty. The conflict highlighted the interconnectedness of the global economy and the high cost of protectionist policies. While some businesses managed to adapt, many, especially smaller enterprises, struggled to survive. The trade war's long-term implications remain uncertain, with the potential for both further conflict and negotiated settlement. Regardless of the outcome, the conflict serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of dialogue, cooperation, and a rules-based international trading system to prevent future economic disruptions and promote global stability. This image serves as a reminder of the human cost of trade wars and the need for policies that support workers and promote sustainable economic growth.